James McIntyre was arrested. He's pled not guilty. And there are witnesses that are claiming that there was no physical assault. To the contrary, it was just a simple handshake. So to talk to us a little bit about this and more of Nancy Mace, the disgrace, always a pleasure to be joined by Midas Touch's very own Ron Filipkowski, who's been covering this story. Ron, thank you so much for joining us again. How are you?
Yes, I'm the expert on the Nancy Mace handshake scandal.
Ron, it really is crazy.
I got to tell you, I was just, how there's all these fake Trump screenshots that go around. People put them out and then people believe they're real. And one that's going around right now is about where Trump says Barron is a better guitar player than Bruce Springsteen. And it's totally fake. So, you read the screenshot and it's like Barron's name is misspelled. So I thought about like replying to the guy and going, it should have been obvious that this is a fake tweet because Trump misspelled Barron's name. But then I thought about it and I'm like, I don't know that he necessarily knows how to spell Barron's name.
That's true. You're probably right about that. Ron, as if
I don't mean to get sidetracked there, but
no, that's okay. I mean, these are the times that we're living in, Ron. We're going to see this stuff every day. If it didn't get bad enough for Nancy Mace on this whole trans women in bathrooms nonsense and her tweeting 1,000 times about it, it seems like every day it's something new with her.
Yeah.
And I thought something was very strange about this story. Number one, there was no video evidence. Number two, nobody corroborated her story. Nobody said that she was assaulted. Number three, she didn't have any visible marks on her or anything. And she shows up in the chambers yesterday wearing this arm sling. And you've been covering this story. And this guy, James McIntyre, to my understanding, who was arrested, has received awards for his work, foster care work. And he doesn't have a criminal record. Very strange. And you've been covering this story, Ron. What can you tell us about it?
Well, when a member of Congress goes to speak at an event, and that's what she was doing, she was speaking at this foster care event, they don't go by themselves. They go with staff, security, the whole deal.
Right.
So you would think that one person on her staff or security or whoever would back up, come out and say, yes, I saw this and this is what happened, corroborate her. But not one has done that. In fact, what did happen is Nancy Mace's former communications director, who used to work for Nancy Mace in Congress, put out this statement. I'll read it to you on Twitter. This is the same woman who told staff, myself included, during January 6th, that she wanted to get punched in the face by a rioter so she could get on TV. She's full of shit, and her prop of a sling is a pathetic ploy for attention. That's Nancy Mace's own former communications director.
Wow.
So then Nancy Mace went after me again today, and she said that I should face the women in my life because I'm making light of this issue. If you take like her word, like her best case scenario, what she told the cops is that he shook her hand and wouldn't let go right away. Like he just held on to her hand. That's her version. Now, the other witnesses, there's like multiple witnesses who dispute that. They said it was a normal handshake. And, the other, so that's number one. So to come in an arm sling, and this is especially like a couple days after Trump was like arm wrestling Macron, and was yanking his hand around, to try and show what a tough guy he was. But now the handshakes are supposed to be like an assault. So that was number one, and then the other thing that really tips it off is this, like Mace, got her whole news cycle thing going with the trans bathroom thing. And then, that dies down and she hadn't gotten any media attention for like 3 days in a row. And for her, that's like a crack addict going through withdrawals, who's like or a meth addict who's been out for 3 days and the dealer drives by, and it's like you start chasing up. I mean, that she obviously was like looking for something to get herself back on TV. And of course, what is she doing today? I think though, even like Fox and Newsmax is getting tired of her because even they're not giving her as many interviews on this nonsense. But she was on like Benny Johnson's podcast telling her story today, who was the Russian paid asset.
Right. I called her the Jussie Smollett 2.0 female
I
version.
did.
Yeah, we
I
both
called
think
her Jessie Mace. Yeah.
yeah, that's really and what's really tragic about this, Ron, just like Jussie Smollett, is that the real victims, whether it be the real victim of a sexual assault or the real victim of an attack that has political ramifications, is it takes away from the real victims. Now, my question is this. I believe she made this up. You believe she made this up. There was no physical assault. It's a bunch of nonsense. I think she should be held to account, but what can be done? I mean, if you file a fake police report,
that's a crime.
Right, exactly.
Yeah,
and I think it's a serious crime. So, Ron, what can be done about this? You have witnesses. Elliot Hinkle is one of them. I think there was another trans woman that was a witness as well that said this didn't happen. It was just a regular handshake. As you eloquently pointed out, there's nobody on her staff that's taking her side on this. What can be done about this, Ron?
Yeah, that can. I mean, I was a criminal lawyer for 29 years and handled many cases where people were charged with making a false police report. And how this usually happens is, look, you have to look at it from the cops' perspective. They weren't there. They didn't see it, right? No police saw it. So in that situation, an officer comes up and you have one person says this happened, the other. Now the officer has a choice. They can decide, there's just not enough here. That's number one. Number two, they can just write it up and send it to the prosecutor and say, this is what these people said. This is what you decide if there should be an arrest. You decide if you're going to charge somebody, but we're not sure, so we're not going to make an arrest. But in this particular case, since it involved a member of Congress, they decided to make an arrest. And they decided to make an arrest based solely on her word. And here's the other part too. We always look in these kind of cases for when was the outcry. We call it the outcry. When was the report made? In other words, like when this happened, did she scream and get on the phone and call 911 and call the cops and say, don't you go anywhere? Oh, no. No. Everybody left. She left. Her staff left. Everybody left. And then like 20 minutes later, she calls the cops. So clearly this was like a situation where she maybe thought about it and was like, oh, because what happened is the trans person that he wasn't even a trans person. Okay. The other person was the witness, but this is just a guy. He's not trans. The person who was arrested. And what he says is like, what I believe happened is he shook her hand and he said, you really need to, respect trans people's rights. He made that statement. And I believe that she walked away from there and she got pissed and she got aggravated that this guy would come up to her and say that to her.
Right.
So she decided to create this assault story, which is backed up by nobody, to teach this guy a lesson. How dare you come up to me and say this to me, a member of Congress? I'm going to show you. And she even tweeted that. Like she tweeted F around and find out. That's what she tweeted. So what happens with these filing false police reports is they're always after the fact. Once the cops sort of dig into it, prosecutors start digging into it, and they make the determination that this is BS and they think that's when they will then charge the alleged victim with making a false report. So it always happens a few weeks later. But in this particular case, considering she's a member of Congress, it's going to be a long shot.
Do you think James McIntyre will have the ability and have an opportunity to file a defamation suit against her? I mean, his name is in the news now.
Yeah. In fact, I think McIntyre would have a very good case, but, members of Congress have immunity. And I would think that for things that they say in Congress, they don't have immunity for everything. They don't have immunity for crimes they commit. So I wouldn't think that they would have immunity for this under the speech and debate clause. But considering it was at sort of a congressional event, maybe she could make that argument.
Yeah, I hope he does. I just think she is a disgrace of a human being. And I'm glad you've been covering this as strong as you have. I want to get your take on Donald Trump kind of downplaying the fact that he might not be able to lower the price of eggs. You talked a little bit about this on social media today. It's interesting. He makes all these promises which you've covered extensively, and now he kind of backpedals on it. What are your thoughts on this before he even gets into office?
Yeah, he's backpedaling on a lot. He said he was going to end the war in Ukraine in 24 hours, and now he's saying, well, there's a lot of moving parts, could be very difficult. See, he's already hedging his bets on a lot of things, including this. So the only thing that we can do is sort of catalog all of these things, call him out, show all the broken promises. Of course, he hasn't taken office yet, so you can't do too much yet. But once he takes office and these promises start getting broken, here's what I think he's going to do. I think he's going to keep all the horrible promises and he's going to break all the good ones. Like, all the ones where like, I'm going to, end war. I'm going to cut the budget. I'm going to buy a third. I'm going to balance the budget. All the good ones he's going to break. All the terrible ones, like I'm going to deport everybody and lock everybody up and go after the media. I think he'll keep those promises.
You're probably right. I think that makes a lot of sense. The bad stuff he'll keep, the good stuff, like wanting to actually help us when it comes to the economy or lowering prices. I think prices are going to get jacked up. Ron, I hope you stay on this Nancy Mace stuff. I know you will. You guys are doing a great job. If she's responding to you, you're doing something right.
Oh, yeah.
So please keep it up.
She always responds to me.
Yeah, well, because you hold her to account, and that's why I have so much respect for you and what you guys do at Midas Touch. Please keep up the great work, my friend. I love it. Maybe we'll catch up with you next week. Ron Filipkowski, thank you so much for your time.
I think he's very
Leonard's getting roughed up.
I can handle it.
Yeah, he can handle it. So, look, I want to say thank you for your service, but it's really hard to say that when you don't respect someone's judgment. And it's hard to respect a lot of police officers' judgment because of the things that they do. In the Penny case, justifying that, I think you said you justified what he did. I've been around crazy people before. I've never reacted to where I put them in a chokehold or even thought about doing anything like that. Most people just ignore them. They're just popping off. There's no justification on jumping up and grabbing someone physically. They haven't harmed you or physically put their hands on anyone, and you put them in a chokehold. Now, in chokehold training, it only takes anywhere between 8 to 15 seconds. And when you're trained to do that, that's when you relieve the pressure, because at that point is when that person is unconscious. When you hold a person's neck or choking them for a period of 6 long minutes while on the floor, you can feel the tension in their body. You can feel their muscles contract. You know when that person is going limp. You don't continue to hold a person around their neck and choke them for 6 long minutes, restricting their oxygen. That is murder, sir. And I don't understand why you don't understand and see that. It's clearly murder to me.
I respect your opinion, and it does say in the article, I didn't read the police report, but it does say that Perry loosened up a little bit while he was holding him for the police. And
the police report? Yeah, I believe that.
I didn't read the police report. Well, what I mean is, all I have is what was put out in the news, and I understand what you're saying, and yes, it could have been handled differently. I don't disagree with that at all, and he may pay the price for that civilly. But what I'm saying is, if you have a justice system and a jury, and they acquit him on both counts, you can have your opinion, but that's not what happened.
Well, evidently the jury had their opinion. I don't think they had the right facts. You don't choke someone out for 6 minutes and call it justifiable. It's ridiculous. You can subdue someone. You can hold them down. That's no problem with that. I have no issue with that at all. That's justifiable. But choking them out and restricting their oxygen, that's murder, man. Yeah. Come on. This is a little common sense.
Listen, I tend to agree with you a little bit more, sir. I appreciate the phone call. It's funny. Somebody on social media, an imbecile, says, why would a good cop come on this show? So to the imbecile who makes a statement
that's
like
that.
Yeah, to the imbecile who makes a statement like that, I have always considered myself pro-police. I have been involved in charity work with law enforcement and police officers who've been shot on the job, but I also call out bad policing and good policing on this show. I remember the shooting that took place at UNLV. I had nothing but praise for those officers who stopped more. And the man does have kids and a family. There have been a lot of jokes on social media, a lot of memes about this guy who was not a good guy. I'm certainly willing to admit that. And we have a lot of problems with our healthcare system. My take is that we shouldn't be condoning or laughing at this murder that took place. To talk to us a little bit about this, because he's been more on the side of, the other side of it. Maybe he could explain himself a little better. His name is Professor Anthony Zenkus. He's a professor over at Columbia and at Delphi. And I appreciate you, Professor, for joining us on the show today, sir. How are you?
Hey, I'm great. Sorry about the back and forth, but I'm glad it's finally working. Good to be here.
Yeah.
Hello, Las Vegas. I'm jealous of your weather. I would like to be there right now, but
yeah,
that's another story.
The weather here is pretty awesome. There's no question about that, Anthony. All right, so let me get this straight. Help me understand this. You've been more on this, and correct me if I'm wrong. You've been more on the side of defending the memes and maybe the jokes about this man's death. Tell me why, and tell me if I'm characterizing it correctly.
No, that's not correct. I haven't been defending memes. I've been commenting on the tenor of what's going on in response to the killing of Brian Thompson, and really using it as an opportunity to have the conversation about universal healthcare, which we need. And I mean, obviously, and I'm sure you've covered this, there's a lot of frustration across the political spectrum with these companies, and United Healthcare being the worst, having an almost 1/3 denial rate. It's just, and so I saw it as an opportunity to have that conversation. And every day, and this isn't new for me, I've been posting since the research came out in 2020 or 2021 about the 68,000 Americans who die every year needlessly because of the for-profit system. So, the post, it's not a tweet anymore, the post that got like millions of views that I did on December 4th basically said, today we mourn the death of Brian Thompson, the CEO of, and then I I said, actually, today we mourn the deaths of the 68,000. And I just want to be real clear on something. Not everybody may agree with this. I'm very anti-violence. So I'm also anti-gun. I have my own views. I don't apologize for my views. And I think anytime anybody's shot, killed in any way, it's horrible. And when we center the death of one man, regardless of what he did in his life, over 68,000, and again, the mainstream media is not having the conversation. To me, that's a crime. And people are obsessing about it.
Yeah. So, Professor, I think everything you've said is very legitimate, and I don't necessarily disagree with anything you said. Obviously, I would hope that we would agree. Anybody who glorifies this guy, Luigi Maggioni, I think is sick, because Brian Thompson has kids and he doesn't have a family. However, one of the first things I said was, well, I don't condone this killing, and it's sounding to me like you don't condone it either, which I'm happy to hear. Brian Thompson was not a good guy. And I'm not afraid to talk about this on the air. He was under investigation by the DOJ for insider trading. And you're absolutely right. The business practices over there at United Healthcare, I am not here to defend that. Now, what I've said, and I think we'll agree on this, Anthony, what I've said is let's turn a negative into a positive. In a way, maybe something that you're doing as well, in that let's have this conversation. Let's talk about, I had a woman, who hit me up on social media the other day who said she lost her son to cancer. They had United Healthcare, and her son was not able to get the care that he needed to save his life. There are a lot of stories like that across the country, not just with United. So I'm with you on that. And I think we need to turn a negative into a positive. I just want to make sure that nobody is condoning, I'm not saying you are, but nobody is condoning this guy's death and saying that violence is the answer, and nobody is glorifying his death. I don't like the memes because this guy has kids. His kids haven't done anything wrong. But again, Brian Thompson, I don't think he was a very good guy, but we can't take matters into our own hands and start shooting people on the streets.
Agreed. And I just think it needs to be emphasized. Being the victim of a violent crime doesn't make one a saint. That doesn't mean violent crime is okay. The only issue I'm going to take it with you on this is you said we can't be. People are. There are many people. We're talking Facebook, which is not a bastion of socialist radicalism, where we're like moms and older people there wasn't there tens of thousands of laughing emojis
on
the. I understand that.
Yeah.
But I think it's wrong if we miss what's going on. Imagine that a death, and it's funny because this guy, I had never heard of him before. He wasn't a known. Some corporate heads like Jamie Dimon, we know them. Lloyd
Yeah.
Blankfein, like we knew these. I'd never heard of Brian Thompson. So somebody that people had never heard about, and they're going out of their way to put a laughing emoji on the memorial death announcement that United Healthcare. I think it's a mistake to ignore the fact that so many people have so much deep-seated anger and hatred. And I'm not saying you disagree with this, but you and I can say that's in poor taste. And people who are good people are feeling this, right? And there are people that are condoning it. And, I just want to talk real quickly about violence for 1 second, because I think it's sad, but we are a violent society. Our government, regardless, I understand people have differing views on Ukraine and on Israel, but from my perspective, we are always mired in some sort of battle or war where often vulnerable people, many times, but not always, like brown people or black people in parts of the world that are struggling, end up on the wrong guns that we either are holding or lately that we are applying. I've just witnessed carnage for 14 months straight in Gaza, and to hear politicians come out and say, like, we don't resort to violence, you actually do. And I think one of the problems is when violence is the language spoken by the society, it will end up inevitably being the language used to transform. I don't want that to be the case, which is why I've been working. I occupy this end of this little, rant here. I've been since 2011, when I occupied Wall Street, I've been actively working for single payer nationally and in New York. There is a bill that's still sitting in committee. The Democrats run the state. They won't let it out of committee. Same thing happened in California. Single payer shot down, completely run by Democrats. And I've been working through the system, and I will continue to do that. But if the system continues to ignore it, and people know, everyone has a horror story or knows someone with a horror story about healthcare.
Sure.
I'm surprised this hasn't happened already. And
I know there's a lot of issues with Obamacare, right? I understand a lot of people have issues. 20 million people are on Obamacare, but a big issue I have with the Republicans is Donald Trump. They keep complaining about Obamacare, but yet he has no replacement plan. He said it again the other day. I have concepts of a plan. That's my issue. The biggest issue with the Republican Party that I have, and I have many issues with the Republican Party, is that they'll bitch and complain about something and they have no solution to it, right? None, zero, no solutions with all the gun violence in this country. No solutions when it comes to our healthcare. I'm not saying the Democrats are perfect, Professor, but at least they have something in place. We can all say
I don't agree. No, I don't agree.
You think Trump?
I agree with the first part. Yeah. I want to go on record. Yeah, the Republicans have zero solutions to any of the problems that matter to us. Right. And I think this has been known for a while. It's comical when Trump says that. I have a concept like, come on, man, like you don't. And he didn't. He's. By the way, if this issue mattered to Donald Trump, and I'm saying this, I'm sure you have listeners across the spectrum, to those that voted for him, if he cared about your health care, he was in office for 4 years and out of office for 4 years. He could have been working on it. He's not. He's not. Right. And so there's that. The problem is the Democrats have undermined every step of the way a push to expand to single payer. Now, there are some people who said, well, we can't do that so quickly. We should go to a public option first. Joe Biden ran on a public option, and once he got the nomination, never mentioned it once again. My problem with the Democrats is not that I don't believe there are Democrats, I do believe, that do care and want this to be. But the party itself as a whole and the leadership is firmly entrenched in corporate status quo. They will tweak the edges and say, like, listen, the ACA leaves 27 to 30 million Americans with no health care and another 50 million that are have inadequate care to the point that they can't afford to use it.
Okay, so, but can I just interject
real quick? With the Democrats, you could do these things. They don't even try. And answer me this: why did Joe Biden run on a public option and then not even mention it during the campaign and not since he's been in office?
There's
Because
no doubt that
they're not going to
that's a
change
mistake.
anything.
That's a mistake, but I would also counter by saying, who is giving the biggest tax breaks to these large healthcare companies? It's not the Democrats. It's Donald Trump and the Republicans who have the biggest tax breaks.
You're
for the
telling
top
me the
1%.
Republicans are terrible. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to talk over you. I apologize.
I don't think every Republican is terrible. I think Donald Trump is a terrible person. But
I think a lot of Republicans. No, I don't mean as people. I don't care who's a good or a bad person. When it comes to the issues that matter to the working class, the Republican Party itself is terrible, and the Democrats allow it. And we had Bernie 2016, Medicare for All, energized a whole group of people.
Right.
And it's a matter of historical record. They cheated and they colluded. I mean, that's why 4 DNC heads had to resign.
I think
so. Then
I would love to see Bernie Sanders be the president of the United States. I think it'd be a wonderful.
I believe you. And so would a lot of, listen, I knew Republicans that would have voted for him. And then the interesting thing was they're like, I don't agree with him on everything, but I believe he's authentic and he's not full of, garbage. But here's the thing. You are a Democrat and a voter that I'm assuming votes Democrat consistently.
Lean to the left, independent. I did not vote for Barack Obama. I did not vote for Hillary Clinton. I'm extremely anti-Donald Trump.
Yeah, and I get it. I mean, he's who he is. There's nothing new there. The problem is the Democratic establishment is not for universal health care. The Democrats who run California had a single payer bill, because one of the things we looked at was, and this is an important piece, I just want to get this out. If the federal government is not going to address universal care, which the ACA is not universal, right? It's better than what existed before, but it's not universal. If the federal government will do it state by state. Democrats run California, 2 branches of government. I mean, the 2 houses of their state legislature, as well as the governor's mansion, right? They own that. The bill sat in committee. Newsom ran on the single payer bill in California. And then UHC, United Healthcare, dumped a shit ton of money gave it to Newsom. Yeah, he got over $100,000 from them, I think. And then into a whole bunch of other legislators. They never talked about it, never let it out of committee. The same thing happened in New York. Every chance we have for transformational legislation, the establishment Democrats do everything they can to stop it by undermining a candidacy like they did with Bernie in 2016 or 2020, or giving so much money to a state that nothing changes. Meanwhile, listen, if this was just like, something we disagreed on but didn't have these consequences, that's one thing. You talk about 680,000 people dead in 10 years, not counting that research shows a third of all COVID deaths were due to the private insurance industry. That's over 1 million people. And my thing, I just want to talk about it. And whoever's going to listen, I'm going to listen. And my posts are meant to get engagement going and conversation going, and that's how I do it. People got pissed off, but
I think you have good intentions. It's why I wanted to invite you on. I wanted you to be able to clarify the death of Brian Thompson, which you have, and I'm happy to hear that we both agree that we should never condone violence. I'm not a big gun guy either, by the way. And that's why I wanted you on, because I do think you have good intentions, as I do. We all want everyone in this country to be, at least I do and you do, to be able to have affordable health care. And regardless of pre-existing conditions, people have a right to live their life and be happy and get the help that they need, medically speaking. I'm with you 150%. And it's an important conversation to have. And that's why I say, if Brian Thompson's murder can be used, without defending it, to start this conversation up again and get people talking about it, and maybe his death can save lives long term, then maybe that's a good thing, where we can turn a negative into a positive, right? We only got about 2 minutes left. Go ahead, Professor.
Yeah, I think you're well that we have an opportunity right now. And I'm also concerned about those that are doing a celebritizing. It's not a word, but I just made it one. The suspect or person, if it was a suspect, he's been charged. I'm not even going to, we don't need more celebrities. We need conversations on the 68,000 that die every year. We need conversations on the millions that have been thrown into financial ruin the past 10 years because of this system.
Uh-oh, I think we just lost you. Professor, I appreciate you coming on. It appears as though we lost, the connection was a little faulty there, but I appreciate you taking the time to join us, Professor. Thank you for jumping on with us. And I'm glad that, because you, like you said, some of your tweets had millions and millions of views and tons of comments, and some people were going after you. And I wanted to give you the opportunity to come on the show and clarify, which you have. If you're just joining us, his name is Professor Anthony Zenkus, who just joined us on the show. Professor at Columbia and Adelphi. Some of his tweets got millions and millions of views because some thought, based on his statements, that he was in some way condoning the murder of Brian Thompson. He's very passionate when it comes to healthcare. He was able to clarify, and I'm glad I gave him the opportunity to do so, because I think his positions are actually very reasonable if you actually take the opportunity to listen to him, which is what I did on this show today. We cannot, and I say we, anybody, you shouldn't be condoning what Luigi Maggioni did.